Okay, welcome everybody to the CGHS research webinars. These are hosted by the Public Health Department of the College of Graduate Health Sciences. Today's speaker is Erin Breitenbach. She has her PhD in health education from the University of Texas at Austin. She's nearing her completion of an MED in health sciences education at the University of Houston, and is an associate professor and program chair for our Doctor of Health Education and Doctor of Education in Health Professions programs. She has chaired to completion 33 dissertations in the DHEd program and focuses her attention on leading students in completing their doctoral research projects in the EDD program and finding ways to more effectively help students to the finish line in their doctoral program. Currently, most of her focus is on the scholarship of teaching and learning, as well as continuous quality improvement of the EDD program to incorporate current issues in health professions education through the advisement of both internal and external experts in the field of the health professions education. Today, she's going to be presenting evaluating a model to increase doctorate student completion rates, a focus on social connectedness and structure. With that, Erin, I'm going to unmute you and mute myself, and you can go.
Thank you, Marcia. So today I am going to be talking about a study that I did in the EDD program, and which was published earlier this year. I evaluated the use of the Ewing model. So this is the title actually of the publication, but since everybody is probably pretty familiar with that model, I'm referring to it here as the Ewing model, which is the model that is used in our Doctor of Health Science program here at ATSU. And I was evaluating the use of this model in the EDD program. And this model was adopted from that DHEd program for use in the EDD program because of its success in the DHEd program in terms of degree completion rates. This particular study focused on social connectedness and the usefulness of the structure of the curriculum and instruction from the student's perspective. And I will be going over why I chose to look at those two things throughout this presentation. So just a little bit of background first about doctorate program completion rates. Nationally, the average is 57%, meaning 57% of the students who start a doctorate program actually complete it. The completion rate of our own DHSE program, though, is quite a bit higher than the national average at 73%. But in our previous DHEd program, Doctor of Health Education program, which we're still phasing out and replaced with the EDD program here at ATSU, only 36% completed for various reasons, but a big one being that they could not complete the dissertation, which was the culminating project for the DHEd program. And so when we replaced the DHEd program with the EDD program, we adopted the same model the DHSE program was using to complete the culminating project. So why is not completing a doctorate program a problem? Well, economically, large amounts of money are spent by institutions of higher education to recruit doctoral students in the first place. And once they are admitted, these institutions often pay for their tuition in exchange for student assistantships. This money is essentially lost if the student does not complete the degree program. That's not necessarily the case at College of Graduate Health Studies. We don't do it, but that way, we don't do that kind of thing, but at many universities, they do. Socially, the students who could have become talented leaders, innovative researchers, prolific scholars, influential educators with their doctorate degrees may not if they do not ever receive their doctorate degree. And then at a personal level, a big reason to be concerned about graduate student attrition is that it can essentially ruin people's lives, and the decision to leave can have long-term effects on students' emotional well-being. So why don't they graduate? For various reasons, but a big one is that they are just not completing that culminating project. All right, so I looked at the literature to see what are the things that hinder completing a doctorate program and what are things that facilitate completing one. And in terms of hindrances, we have this one right here is a big one. Becoming a knowledge creator after being a course taker is a very difficult transition to make for many people, because with the culminating project, they really are creating new knowledge, and they just did a bunch of core courses where they were mostly consuming existing knowledge. And this is a big leap that a lot of students ultimately have a very difficult time making, and some just do not end up doing it. Also, another hindrance to completion is just an inability to be self-directed, a lack of community, poor mentorship and feedback when they're in that culminating project phase from their chair or advisor, low feelings of social connectedness, feeling isolated from their peers, students feeling like they don't fit into the department's structure and culture, financial stress, and finally, low support from friends and family. And then things that do facilitate completion are very much related, but in the kind of the other way. Just having a sense of belonging, students being a part of a community of practice with their peers, consistent, timely, substantive feedback from their advisor or chair, again, that's in that culminating research project phase. When the students' expectations of their program, coursework, and policies, the program they're in, the doctorate program they're in, match those of the program itself. Support services, this would be like our University Writing Center, for example, and of course, family support. So the Ewing model was created and implemented in 2010 for the our online Doctor of Health Sciences program at ATSU to help students complete their culminating project, which is called an ARP, or Applied Research Project, in that program. And the Ewing model is characterized by 4 major components. First, a highly structured sequential curriculum, which consists of 5 courses where students learn as they go and learn as they are conducting their own research. An intense facilitation and dialogue situation. This occurs mainly through online discussion forums with students and the instructor as part of the courses in this curriculum, those courses that I just mentioned. Performance-based assessment of core research competencies. And finally, collaborative learning within a cohort model, meaning they are doing all this with the same group of students and same instructor throughout the entire process. An evaluation of graduation rates using this model showed, as I mentioned, a 73% graduation rate. So in the fall of 2016, the EDD program began and implemented this model for its doctoral research project, or DRP. And on the next slide, I'm going to focus on what we put together for this particular part of the Ewing model, the highly structured sequential curriculum. So what that consists of in the EDD program is the first course is where they write their proposal for their DRP. The second course, they're conducting a literature review for the topic they chose. The third course is where they're putting together their research design and they start collecting their data. The fourth course is where they're learning how to analyze those data and actually analyzing those data. And then the fifth course is where they're compiling their DRP into another format that they can submit for publication, and then actually submitting it for publication. So the 2 predictors that I studied in this particular study were social connectedness and the usefulness of the curriculum and instruction in the DRP process from the student's perspective. And just backing track to who I studied, the first cohort to start this part of the curriculum of the 5 courses started in, let's see, so it's fall block 2 of 2017. And by the second fall block of 2018, that block was in the last course, and 4 other cohorts had started. And across all of these cohorts, there were 37 students somewhere in this process of 5 courses. And that's not a huge number, and nobody had actually finished yet, but I still wanted to do some preliminary evaluation of these particular predictors. And because these have been shown to predict doctoral student completion or persistence, it's measured different ways, but so have many of the related variables that I mentioned previously. And so I thought these were 2 that were worthy to look at, I thought, for this particular study. So just to go back real quick to our list of hindrances and facilitators, several reflect these 2 particular predictors of success. We've got a lack of community, which is a reflection of social connectedness, the poor mentorship and feedback, reflection of the structure of the curriculum and instruction, students feeling low feelings of social connectedness, of course, that's social connectedness, isolation from peers, again, social connectedness, and then back to the same list of things that facilitate completion, we got the sense of belonging related to social connectedness, the community of practice with doctoral peers, again, a reflection of social connectedness, consistent, timely feedback, consistent, timely, and substantive feedback from their advisor or chair, a reflection of the structure of the curriculum and instruction. All right, and student expectations of the program, coursework, and policies matching those of the program. And again, that I thought was a reflection of the structure of the curriculum and instruction. So I put together research questions, 4 for social connectedness and 4 for the usefulness of the structure of the curriculum and instruction. So first, for social connectedness, I was asking how connected to the students in their cohort do current DRP students feel? How connected to their DRP instructor do they feel? How does social connectedness differ between courses with a high frequency of online discussion forums and courses with a low frequency of online discussion forums? And how does the level of student-to-student connectedness compare with the level of student-to-instructor connectedness across all of the courses? And then 4 more for the usefulness of curriculum instruction, usefulness of the structure of the curriculum and instruction, actually. How well do students think the DRP courses prepare them for successfully completing their DRP? How clear do students think expectations and organization have been in detailing what they need to do to be successful in their DRP? How much do students think feedback from their DRP instructor helps them improve? And how do students rate the quality of the instruction they have received about their DRP? So research design, this was a cross-sectional study. I created a survey in Qualtrics, which is an online survey tool, and I sent it out via email during the 5th week of the 2018-19 fall block 2. All 37 current DRP students were recruited, and 67% participated. And these numbers here in parentheses, 7, 7, 5, 4, 2, that's how many in each of the 5 courses participated. So 7 in the first course, 7 in the second course, and so on. Okay, so the instrumentation for the survey combined 2 let's see, the instrumentation. Okay, so I have these 2 variables that I've been going over. Usefulness of curriculum and instruction was made up of 4 constructs: curriculum for DRP preparation, clarity of expectations and organization, facilitation, and direct instruction. And then social connectedness, of course, we had student-to-student connectedness and student-to-instructor connectedness. Okay, so I I combined 2 previously validated instruments into one survey. First, there was one by these authors that I'm not going to try. I can never pronounce that first one, so I'm not even going to attempt to. But you can read it on the screen. So these people measured a variable they just called curriculum and instruction as a predictor of online doctoral persistence. But it consisted of those same 4 constructs that I just went over. And I used an adaptation of their 4 survey items with 1 item measuring each construct. And yes, I got permission from them to do that. And then I also used a survey by these people that they created and validated an instrument called the doctoral student connectedness scale. And I used a slightly adapted version of that to measure social connectedness. Their instrument consisted of 18 items, including 9 that measured student-to-student connectedness and 9 that measured student-to-instructor connectedness, and they gave me permission to do that. So just to give you an idea of what exactly the survey items were, because I always like to know, I'm just, you know, I got to know what exactly, what were you really asking? We were asking for the usefulness of the structure of curriculum and instruction for that construct. How well do the DRP courses help you to successfully complete your DRP? And these were answered on a Likert scale 1 to 5. How clear have the DRP instructor and DRP course content been in detailing what you need to do in order to be successful in the DRP? In general, when you receive evaluative feedback from your DRP instructor, how often has it been useful in determining how to improve? And in general, rate the quality of instruction you have received about your DRP. And then measuring social connectedness, just a sampling of some of the questions. I'm not going to go over all of them, obviously, but just to give you an idea, the questions, for, again, 5-point Likert scale. For student-to-student connectedness, the questions, or I guess these are more like statements. I feel that students in my DRP cohort care about each other. I feel connected to other students in my DRP cohort. I feel like I can easily communicate with other students in my DRP cohort about the DRP, etc. And then student to instructor, we had items such as, in general, rate the quality of instruction you have received about your DRP. When I ask a question or submit work to my DRP instructor, I feel like I receive timely feedback, and so on. So there were 9 in each. Let's see. So then data analyses. A mean composite score was determined for each of 8 scales, 1 for each variable. We got this variable, we got this variable, we got those 4 constructs for that one, 2 constructs for that one. And that's how so I got the mean scores for each of those. And then a Mann-Whitney U-test was conducted to determine any statistically significant difference in social connectedness between courses that had a high frequency of online discussion forums, of which there were 3, and courses that had a low frequency of online discussion forums, of which there were 2. And then I conducted a paired t-test to determine if there is a statistically significant difference between student-to-instructor connectedness and student-to-student connectedness across all courses. So here are the results for the social connectedness, 1 to 5, 1 being low social connectedness, 5 being the highest. Overall, down here we see, well, here, let me explain what we got here. We got the 5 courses down this first column. Then we've got overall social connectedness, student-to-student social connectedness, and then student-to-instructor here, and then frequency. So the frequency is the number of online discussion forums in each of these courses. So the first one had 9, the third one had 9, and the 5th one had 6, and I considered those the high-frequency ones. And then the second course only had 3, and the 4th course only had 2, and I considered those the low frequency ones. So as you can see, overall social connectedness was high, and social connectedness with the instructor was a little higher than it was with other students. The Mann-Whitney U revealed a marginally significant difference between courses with a high frequency of online discussion forums and courses with a low frequency of online discussion forums, with social connectedness being higher in the courses with more discussions than in courses with fewer discussions. Surprise, surprise, right? Okay. So answers to the research questions 1 through 4. How connected to the students in their cohort do current DRP students feel? Very. How connected to their DRP instructor do students feel? Very, and higher than with students. How does social connectedness differ between courses with a high frequency of online discussion forums and courses with a low frequency of online discussion forums? More social connectedness in courses with more discussion forums. How does the level of student-to-student connectedness compare with that of student-to-instructor connectedness across all courses? There's more connectedness with instructors. So then we've got the usefulness of the structure of the curriculum and instruction. And these were also measured on a 5-point scale, but it's flipped, which I probably, should have flipped them back, but I didn't. So high is a 1 here, and low is a 5. So the lower the number, the more usefulness the structure was, and the higher the number, the lower the usefulness of the structure of the curriculum and instruction. So I'm focusing again mostly on just kind of the overall means for each construct here. The level of overall usefulness of the curriculum and instruction was high. And of the 4 usefulness constructs measured, we got 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. Students found facilitation most useful, but all constructs really did reflect a pretty high level of usefulness. So to answer the research questions around that, how well do students think the DRP courses prepare them for successfully completing their DRP? Very well. How clear do students think expectations in organization have been in detailing what they need to do to be successful in their DRP? Very clear. How much do students think feedback from their DRP instructor helps them improve? Extremely useful. How do students rate the quality of the instruction they have received about their DRP? Relatively high. Okay, so what are the conclusions around here? Students in the DRP series of courses indicated a high level of social connectedness and usefulness of the curriculum and instruction. Social connectedness was higher in the courses that involved more online discussion forums, and online discussion forums have previously been shown to support social connectedness in another 2017 study, and a sense of community in another 2016 study, which I can give you, again, I'm not going to attempt to say these people's names, but I've got them all in the references in the back in case you're interested. Online discussion forums may be an effective strategy in the Ewing model for increasing doctoral program completion. And this finding supports those from previous studies also that have shown social connectedness facilitates doctoral program completion. That was one study that showed that, and online collaborative workspaces increase social connectedness in online doctoral students, and that comes from another study. Students thought that feedback from their DRP instructor was very often useful in determining how to improve. The DRP courses did help them to successfully complete their DRP well. The quality of instruction about their DRP was high. How the instructor and course content detailed what they needed to do in order to be successful in the DRP was clear. And so the fact that most of the usefulness of the curriculum and instruction constructs were ranked highly by students supports the use of the Ewing model as a model for success. Regular feedback and facilitation provided by an instructor and a structured curriculum and instruction have been shown in the past by in other studies to facilitate doctoral program completion and retention. So who cares? We do, because we want students to finish the EDD program. Other doctorate programs do, because they could use this model as a strategy for increasing graduation rates. Students do, because it alleviates the emotional strain and loss of professional opportunity that results from an unfinished doctoral degree. And society does because we get more talented leaders, innovative researchers, prolific scholars, and influential educators. But there were limitations of the study. No associations can be made between these variables that I studied and degree completion, since the first cohort to go through the series of DRP courses were in their last course in the series at the time of the data collection. So nobody had finished yet. Despite the relatively high response rate, the sample size is still too low to make strong generalizations about either variable. And there were varying enrollment numbers and varying survey response rates across the 5 DRP courses. So what's next? Well, we can evaluate this model for degree completion in our own EDD program, which of course we will be doing. Other programs could implement this model and evaluate for degree completion. Other programs could implement this model and evaluate for other predictors of doctoral program completion. Other programs could evaluate the effectiveness of this model in dissertation completion as well. That's the end. Thank you very much. Any questions, comments, ideas?
Okay, thank you, Erin. If anybody has any questions, you should be able to unmute yourself by looking down in the lower left-hand corner of your screen and then clicking the unmute button there. If you have any issues unmuting yourself, you can always use the chat function. So does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, this is Josh Bernstein. I do have a question. Erin, so early in your presentation, you talked about this paradigm shift where students had to make a transition where they went from course takers to knowledge producers, or some variation of those terms. And you also talked about a transition from a traditional dissertation to a DRP, and I think we can all clearly see what was gained from that transition. Can you talk about anything that we may have lost when we moved from a traditional dissertation model where students worked individually with 3 committee members and instead moved into a DRP model where there is no longer a committee, but they work with a single facilitator and a cohort as they move through more courses? I think that the positives are all very well outlined in your presentation. What do you think might have been lost based on that transition from traditional dissertation to DRP?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm slightly conflicted on that sometimes because I feel like I think that it behooves a student to be able to take something like a dissertation on in the traditional way and complete it, and that kind of that self-direction, discipline, whatever you want to call it, internal motivation, is important to develop or to have, to be able to create more knowledge out in the real world when they're not going to have a cohort necessarily to work with. And so, I worry about that slightly. I don't know, it'd be really interesting to see how they fare once they graduate and are trying to conduct research on their own, where they don't get so much, direction. So I think it's one of these things. I think it's like where there's just advantages and disadvantages of both. But I would say that that is one of my concerns. What else? Negatives of doing it. Yeah. I think that while they would benefit from having a committee that, like you would traditionally have doing a dissertation the normal way, I don't know if that's a huge loss because they get so much, well, not that peer feedback is equivalent to that, but they do get a lot of feedback. And, you know, there are downsides to having a committee too, because maybe they don't often get back in time, and maybe they just kind of go with what the chair says because they don't have the time. They're not putting, some of them put the time and energy that it deserves into it, and some don't always. And so it's, again, kind of one of those give and take types of things. But those are really the main ones that are coming to mind.
You know, since you brought it up, Erin, I think there's a lot of value in cohort members receiving that peer feedback. But on the flip side of that, I think there might be more value in providing that peer feedback, because that feedback comes from the peers. And I think we learn best by teaching others. Sometimes I think I get more out of my classes than my students do, but good thing Don's not here to hear that.
Don is here to hear that.
Yeah, I'm looking right at you.
I know, and not only that, but it's good training for when they should be continuing peer feedback in reviewing for journals and that kind of thing, reviewing conference proposals. I mean, all these things that they'll be doing as professionals. It's good training for that as well.
I agree.
Hey, Erin,
yeah.
I know that you didn't show us all the questions, but I'm wondering, and maybe it's a next step sort of thing, but I'm wondering how many people, keeping in mind this is health professionals who probably don't really need to do a dissertation and maybe chose our program because they need to get promoted and need to publish, and they walk out of our program with a manuscript ready to submit. And, and wonder how many people actually chose our EDD program because we didn't have a dissertation. We had a DRP, and they didn't want to do a dissertation because they know a lot of people didn't finish them. And so are they self-selecting our program and sort of biasing this results because people are coming to us because we don't have a dissertation? So I'm just curious, did you ask anything about that? Like, why did they even choose this program, or was it because of the DRP?
I didn't, but the first thing that is kind of going through my head as you're, asking that is the doctoral research project, is, I mean, I can't say it's as rigorous as a dissertation, but it kind of is a dissertation. I mean, anybody who has taught this series of courses, I don't know, I mean, Josh, you may disagree, but I mean, a lot of these studies are quite close to a dissertation. So I don't know, I mean, if it's that the word dissertation is kind of looming, and students equate that with having to kind of go off on their own and figure stuff out a lot more than, or if they're coming because they know it's completed within this structured way, and they want that. So it's hard to know, are they coming because the DRP sounds less, easier than the dissertation, or are they coming because it's completed within this structure? I'm not really sure, but that would be a great question to ask.
But they're generally, these are health professionals. So do they really need a dissertation? Like, it's so theoretical. They want something that's more applied, and they want to do something that's publishable. And so maybe they are choosing the DRP because they think this is something that applies to what I'm doing, and I want to do this for my work anyway. And somebody will direct me through it. Anyway, I thought it was a great presentation. I think it's great information, but just something to think about.
Yeah, no, and I think that hopefully what they are coming for is exactly that, where they probably kind of want to learn how to do research to a certain extent, but they don't need to, delve so deeply into one little thing, or one big, but, specific topic. They just want to learn how to conduct research and, like I said, publish it. And we walk them through that whole thing. And then they may or may not have to do it again. But if they do have to do it again, they have a lot of guidance that they can reuse again, probably more so, or perhaps it's just the way it's delivered, than in that kind of traditional sort of one-on-one tutoring model, or I guess I should say mentoring model. Anybody else?
Erin, this is Liwa. I also have a question. So, because of the increase in social connectedness, did you find any anecdotal evidence that students are more likely to encourage one another to get their work published?
You know, yeah, absolutely. In the last course, or nearing the last course, maybe it kind of it was mostly in the last course where we were, obviously it was focused on that, you know, publication, and people were batting ideas back and forth, and maybe why this journal, not that journal. Yes, you should definitely make sure, do this one, because you might have a better chance. So yes, absolutely. I mean, there were, you know, things that we all considered together. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience leading a cohort through this, where, you know, it's kind of one of those things where they want to do the more challenging journal with the higher impact score ratio, whatever they call it. You know, there's so many little indicators now. Or do they go a little bit easier, and, you know, that kind of thing. And so just through that process, they are essentially supporting each other to get this out there in a publication.
Yeah, because, you know, I know for our DHEd students, we as the chairs often provide students with a list of
Mm-hmm.
you know, potential journals for them to disseminate their work. So in the courses that you listed for relative to those DRPs, did you guys have any assignment that actually asking students to research on those journals?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, that's what the whole last course is. Let's see, where is that one? Yeah, the whole last course is the public. I'm not going to go through this whole thing. I forgot how far in it was, but
the last one for publication. Yeah.
Yes, they go, exactly. They go through, you know, just a bunch of discussion forums. They're talking about, you know, obviously they're not searching journals out for their peers, but they are, you know, everybody's kind of figuring their own thing out and then sharing it with their peers in the discussion forum. So there's a lot of discussion going on about this, and they'll ask me, what do you think about this one versus that one? And I'll maybe, you know, maybe I don't even really know because I'm not familiar with those particular journals, or I am, or most of my feedback is just kind of how the process works. And I advise them things like, yeah, well, you know, you can always just email the editor and ask them, how well do they think this might fit in their journal? And some did that and got responses. And so it's more of just kind of a walking them through realistically, how would one do this, you know? And so I think that just the experience of the instructor is very, very helpful. But them sharing kind of their barriers, things they've, you know, found challenging over, you know, trying to figure out what journal and all that, sharing those experiences with each other is really beneficial as well, because they feel less alone, you know?
No, absolutely. Thank you. I definitely think there's a lot we can take away from your presentation. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome.
Erin, I had a question, or at least a suggestion of something to keep an eye on as you continue to do the evaluation. Yeah. It seemed to me like the one of the later courses that had few discussion forums in it, I think it was the data analysis.
Okay.
It seemed like the social connectedness was still relatively high. And so it seems like the social connectedness that they developed maybe early on in the cohort continues on through the courses, even when they don't get as much discussions in the latter half of the courses.
Yeah, for sure. And then there was a little bit of a weird thing here, which I explained in the article, where, let's see, okay, so we go from, let's see, it actually, Yeah, it goes down, but not as much because they're it's sort of building.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that would be interesting to add a question. You know, did you feel, even though they were connecting right out of the gate in the first course, you know, did they obviously, you know, it went up as they progressed through the series of courses because they've been working with each other for a year at that point, right? And so, you know, I mean, one thing for sure I would consider is, because of this change, somewhat significant change between the high frequency and then the low frequency, and then we go high, low, you know, I mean, maybe actually adding some discussions into the second and third, or second and fourth course, because obviously I think that the social connectedness is really valuable. I mean, even if they're not having to focus on, you know, maybe just real kind of less, not real rigorous discussions, but some kind of opportunity to keep that going on. Because you kind of miss it. I mean, you know, everybody's talking for 10 weeks, and then all of a sudden you only get to talk 3 times, and then another, you know. So.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's good to get a break, especially if you're doing something more intense, like.
Yeah, and it did make sense for the literature review, and that was kind of the idea. Delve into the, you're supposed to be reading, not talking now, like read.
Right.
And, you know, but sure. Yeah, and then analyzing data. Yeah, so.
Yeah, but it, you know, and especially in that latter course, it looks like the community that they developed early on still holds.
And they really did. I mean, they were gung-ho about all going to graduation together and the whole deal. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, because I know that's what, you know, when I initially started graduate school many years ago, social connectedness definitely got me through. Sure.
Yeah, and I think there could be longer term, you know, effects in terms of just alumni involvement, you know, because they're finishing on this note of feeling connected with at least one group of students and their instructor. And I think that's really beneficial in terms of them wanting to continue to be involved at some level. Maybe. I mean, I'm totally speculating, but could be. Anybody else? Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Erin.
Yeah. You're welcome. I enjoyed this. I'll be back in October.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Erin.
Okay, bye-bye. If anybody has any other questions that come up, you can always email me.
Okay.
Thanks, Erin.
Yeah, thank you.
Erin.
So, Marcia, I can just, no, you end it, right?
I end it, but you can log off if you want.
Okay. I don't even know how to, though.
Okay. I'll do it. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you all.
Bye.